I was tempted to actually wear a pearl necklace this morning, but I don't own one. So we'll have to string these pearls along through the reflections that we'll hear from those of us offering our reflections this morning. There is a Quaker, and I will start. There's a Quaker expression, "let your life speak," that was just alluded to in the reading from Parker Palmer's slim volume by that title. It's an adaptation of one of the founders of Quakerism, George Fox's advice to early friends: let your life preach. One way to understand this saying is to live in accordance to your highest values and ideals. This understanding is akin to our Unitarian Universalist focus on, as we put it, deeds, not creeds, that emphasize that the ways that our daily lives can give expression to what we truly care about and what we truly hold as of ultimate worth. Letting your life speak can also mean to pay attention to your life. Listen to your experiences and let others do the same. Palmer encourages us to listen for the deeper voices that speak to us rather than trying to bend the world to our will. Palmer advises succinctly, as we heard, before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, listen for what it intends to do with you. Vocation does not come from willfulness. It comes from listening. Now let's think of those two words, willfulness and listening, for a moment. Let's kind of embody what willfulness would look like in you. Find that posture of willfulness. For me, it's something like this. What is it? Let's see it. Willfulness, okay. What do you notice in that posture? Okay. And now, what is the posture of listening? What is that posture for you? For me, it's something like this. And what do you notice? I can't hear you. What? An openness. Yeah. Relaxed. So we have a choice to go through our lives with willfulness, and there are moments when that is needed, but also to go through our lives with that sense of listening to our lives as well. Palmer says, I must listen to my life and try to understand what it is truly about, quite apart from what I would like it to be about, or my life will never represent anything real in the world, no matter how earnest my intentions. So my first encounter with Parker Palmer, as some of you know, was during an in-between time in my own life when I took what we call today gap years between my junior and senior year in college. Through a series of coincidences, which I tend to refer to as synchronicities, I went to Pendle Hill, the Quaker Center for Study and Contemplation in Wallingford, not too far from here, for several months. For various reasons, at age 22, I needed to catch up with myself. I needed a stopping place in that trajectory of my life from age 16, when my mother died, and I had propelled myself forward willfully, gone to college, and proven to myself that I could go forward one way or another. But in what direction? I had the willfulness down pat. I needed that willfulness to get up to that point. But something in my soul also was beckoning to be listened to. So I suspect many of us have had stopping moments in our own lives when we needed to recalibrate, when we needed to find new sources of meaning, when we needed to discern before we could decide, right? Folks, don't leave me now. Could you sit right? Yes or no? Am I alone with this? Okay. Oh my goodness. You go away on vacation. You go away on vacation, you come back, and they're like, jeez. All right. So I suspect that these moments that occurred in many of our lives also give us the opportunity to do deeper reflection and to attentively and intentionally do this work of inner recalibration or reordering. These moments when we are called to stop and to recalibrate are sometimes not even noticed. We speed past them. We hop over them, or we ignore them until we can't anymore. To let our life speak does require slowing down a bit. To let our life speak does require getting out of cruise control. To let our life speak does mean to cultivate a deeper listening to our inner voice, and not just the ones that we might hear through our earbuds and the ever-present clattering around us or even within us. Now, as a child, I loved to read. I remember when I got my library card at age 7. I went to the library soon after getting my card, and I asked the librarian, I loved librarians, if they had any children's books in Italian that my mother could read to me. The librarian took me to a place in the library I would have never discovered myself. She handed me a copy of The Adventures of Pinocchio in Italian. And of course, the story is known to most of us who may have seen any of the film adaptations of the book. It is the adventures of a wooden puppet, Pinocchio. Who's heard of this story? Great. Who was carved by a woodcarver, Geppetto, in a Tuscan village. Pinocchio created a wooden puppet. He dreams of becoming a real boy. And he is known for his short nose, which grows when he's under stress, or especially when he lies. That's right. Of course, I already knew the basics of the story from one of its film adaptations. And there was something in the story that captivated me. This idea of becoming real. This idea of having adventures. And this idea of developing that inner sense of truth. That inner sense of at rightness. What today I might call equanimity. And being attentive to those times when I would be off kilter, when I knew I was out of integrity, and it would show, maybe to others, and maybe even to myself. Now, my mother began reading the story to me in Italian, but then she got diverted, and she started telling me stories from her own life, which captivated me even further. The storytelling from her own life became a practice that we continued even as I grew older. Sometimes when I was helping to chop garlic or onions, I did tell you she was from Italy, right? She would tell me these stories. And sometimes we would just be sitting outside drinking iced tea. I was particularly fascinated by the stories of her growing up in Italy during Mussolini's fascist regime and what she and her family did to try to resist, to stay safe, but yet undetected, since at one point they were hiding people in their home. Of her stories of coming to this country as a young adult and how she found her way, learned the language through reading the subtitles in Italian, and navigated this time the best way she could. There were many stories, and sometimes I would ask her questions about the stories. that would lead into places of deeper understanding and making sense of these events, gleaning some wisdom. Often my mother would provide the wisdom outright in short phrases, such as, Larry, no matter what anyone says to you, and sometimes she would put into that, no matter what the church says, you have to follow your conscience. She conveyed to me pearls of wisdom that were embedded with ounces or molecules of courage, of inclinations towards risk-taking, and always being open to a sense of life as an adventure, as something to discover and not just live, as a gift and not just a given. This diving into life, into my own story and that of others, is a practice that has followed me throughout my own life, in my role as a therapist, as a minister, and as a caring friend. This summer, I had the opportunity of 5 days in a guided retreat called an intensive journal workshop that was developed by Ira Progoff, who developed this method as a practical and humanistic adaptation of Carl Jung's depth psychology. I'd actually taken this same workshop a number of times. People do that. Taken it a number of times in the past, but it had been some decades. And I'd taken it a couple times with Ira Progoff. I sensed somehow, as I was approaching this year, that I needed to do it again this time. The process is done in a reflective silence so that we can truly listen to our lives. It is led by a facilitator that invites you into various sections of the journal, beginning with what's called the period log. The central question for the period log is, where am I now in my life? Maybe as I say that question, you might imagine the question like moving through the congregation and maybe even landing in you in some way. But before you respond, I want you to recognize that the process is to not just answer the question, to not direct ourselves to think about it deliberately, but to let ourselves inwardly feel the movement of our life as it has been taking shape in our present period. Do you get that distinction? So you could say, where am I now in my life? You could say, well, I'm in Wilmington. Or you can say, where am I now? And feel yourself in that sense of what is happening in your life, what is emerging in your life now. Do you see the distinction? Do you see what it means, or the distinction between thinking about your response and feeling your way into the response? See what emerges in imagery and so forth? Yes or no? Just say yes. Okay. So other sections invite us into a life review, the stepping stones of our own life, the stepping stones of our spiritual life, inner dialogues with persons or events or works or dreams. There's an interplay in the process of writing that also allows imagery to emerge. It's called twilight imagery, that captures a certain way of getting wisdom, similar to the kind of wisdom that can come to us in dreams as well. Progoff was prompted to develop this intensive journal process after he had a dream. It was during World War II, and he dreamed that all the sacred books in the world were being burned in a bonfire. And as he woke up, he thought to himself, if all the sacred books in the world were burned, we'd have to recreate them. And gradually, over time, his study with the lives of creative people, he began to articulate the inner process that helps any one of us draw our own inner wisdom. Progoff wrote, Bibles are indeed being renewed and extended in the depth of individual experience. It must be that as we work in our personal depth, that we can make contact each in our own way in varying degrees with the same inexhaustible sources out of which the old Bibles came. Whenever an individual touches those sources, regardless of the language or the doctrine or the symbols in which experience comes, he writes, new sparks of divinity enter the world. And these sparks ignite fires that give warmth and light that do not consume. So I've invited 3 of our members to share some of their pearls of wisdom with you this morning. So